Andrei Chikatilo is a notorious figure who instilled horror and astonishment in the hearts of people amidst the tragic events of history. He is known as one of the most brutal and cold-blooded serial killers in the history of Russia and Europe. This video takes us on a deep exploratory journey into the mind of this killer, whose name was written in letters of blood and terror on the pages of history. We will follow his terrifying trail in the souls of his victims and attempt to unravel the complex psyche that drove him to commit his heinous crimes mercilessly. Was he born evil, or are there hidden reasons behind his transformation into a human monster? Together, we will examine real events and facts about Chikatilo's crimes, which will provide us with a vivid and thought-provoking image of the extent to which social and psychological circumstances can shape individuals' personalities, whether for the better or for the realm of human evil. Andrei Romanovich Chikatilo was born on October 16, 1936, into a poor family in a village in eastern Russia. He suffered from hydrocephalus of birth, which caused him health problems later on. His birth coincided with the period of the Great Famine that struck Ukraine, also known as the Holodomor, or the Ukrainian Genocide. This famine led some people to resort to cannibalism to overcome their hunger. His mother told him a horrifying story about his older brother who disappeared, and she implied that the neighbors had eaten his flesh. This narrative traumatized him permanently, and it's believed that his illness at birth and his mother's stories influenced the formation of this sadistic personality. During those years, the Soviet Union carried out a mass roundup, and Andrei's father became a prisoner of war to the Nazis. His mother was raped in front of him, resulting in a pregnancy, and he gained an illegitimate sister. The father returned after 6 years of absence, and Andrei suffered physical violence from his parents due to bedwetting until the age of 12. He also experienced vision problems and took years to adapt to his condition. As he grew older, he became increasingly shy, especially around women, as he had been sexually frustrated from an early age due to his hydrocephalus. In his teenage years, he had a romantic relationship with a girl from the village, but this relationship ended due to his sexual impotence. Andrei married a woman named Fedosia in 1963, and despite his sexual problems, the couple had 2 children. He always considered himself a nature's mistake and believed he had been castrated since birth. Nevertheless, he was described as a diligent, loving husband and a stable individual who never raised his voice in front of his children. He also became a respected member of the Communist Party. His criminal persona began to emerge in 1978 on a street in the city of Rostov, Russia. He spotted a young girl named Lena, who was 9 years old, walking alone. Chikatilo approached her and lured her to his house in a friendly manner. Once she entered, he attacked her and attempted to rape her with his fingers. This was Chikatilo's first known crime. Witnessing the child's blood aroused him sexually, and this deviant arousal caused him to lose control of himself. He then took out a knife from his pocket, which he always carried, and wounded the girl with a small cut to her abdomen. However, seeing the blood flowing and the victim's suffering made it even more pleasurable for him. His loss of control escalated, and he began stabbing her multiple times and strangling her to death. He was terrified by the consequences of this heinous act and feared that someone might have heard the girl's screams. When he calmed down and realized that everything was still under control, he disposed of the girl's body in a nearby river. The body was found 2 days after her murder, shocking the entire city's inhabitants. The police began searching for the killer, and during the investigation, one of Chikatilo's neighbors reported hearing some noises in his house. This led the police to summon Andrei for questioning. Andrei attended the interrogation, and despite having a spot of the victim's blood on his shoe, his calm demeanor helped him get through the 8 interrogation sessions. Additionally, his wife provided a strong alibi that allowed him to evade any accusations against him, claiming that he was with her. Andrei escaped this charge, and the police instead accused a man residing near the river. This unfortunate man had a prior conviction for child abuse, and he was tortured until he eventually confessed to a crime he did not commit. He was sentenced to death. Not satisfied with his first crime, Andrei committed another in the same year. He attacked a 17-year-old prostitute with the intention of having sex with her. However, his sexual impotence led the girl to mock him, which drove him into a state of uncontrollable rage. He brutally killed her by strangling her, cutting her throat, and mutilating her breasts. He even ate her nipples to experience sexual arousal once again. With this crime, Chikatilo realized that committing murder and inflicting harm represented the ultimate sexual act for him, providing the highest level of arousal. He decided to add more and more victims to his list over time. His third victim was a 13-year-old girl whom he abducted from a town. He stabbed her approximately 40 times and mutilated her eyes. This method became a signature feature of his crimes. When he reached his fourth victim, Andrei was only targeting female individuals. However, this crime marked his first male victim, a 9-year-old boy. Although the boy's body was not found, Andrei confirmed that he was responsible for his death and admitted to tearing his genitals apart. The killer's modus operandi remained consistent: rape, murder, torture, and post-mortem sexual assault. The police began discovering numerous bodies in the forest, all showing signs of violence, sadism, and general mutilation. The youngest victim killed by Andrei Chikatilo was an 8-year-old child who was murdered in a public park in 1983. The oldest victim was a 31-year-old woman who was killed in 1990. Chikatilo killed and sexually assaulted at least 52 people, both boys and girls, between 1978 and 1990. His methods involved killing his victims while engaging in sexual acts with them to exert control over them. He would strangle or stab them and gag them to prevent them from screaming. He developed a pattern of targeting children of both sexes whom he encountered at train and bus stations before luring them into nearby forest areas where he could commit his crimes and mutilate them using a knife. In some cases, Chikatilo ate parts of his victims' bodies and removed body parts such as their noses or tongues. In the early cases, a common pattern was to harm the eye area and remove the victim's eye sockets in many instances. Chikatilo later attributed this act to his belief that his victims retained a facial imprint of him in their eyes, even after death. Despite the high number of victims over the years, the police were unable to apprehend him, and they conducted a difficult and challenging search for this sadistic killer who terrorized the entire city and even spread fear to all suburbs of the Soviet Union. Meanwhile, Chikatilo continued his crimes without hesitation, as murder and rape became a source of pleasure and excitement in his life. In 1983, the Moscow police formed a search team and launched a large-scale campaign to arrest several suspects. Despite this effort, Chikatilo committed a new crime in 1984, leading the police to conclude that the perpetrator was still at large and enjoying freedom outside prison walls. Consequently, the police released the suspects. The police became desperate in their attempts to find the serial killer, so they enlisted the help of a psychiatrist to understand the killer's mind scientifically. The doctor provided them with some characteristics of the killer's personality based on the information provided, such as approximate age and social status. The police distributed a bulletin with Chikatilo's personal characteristics, not just his appearance, to the investigators. Chikatilo followed the news related to his crimes and began committing crimes outside that town. He was arrested in 1990 after exhibiting suspicious behavior. Initially, he refused to confess to any of the murders, so the investigators decided to allow the same doctor to talk to him. Chikatilo felt the clear flattery in the doctor's approach and provided comprehensive details about all the murders he committed. He even led the police to the locations of previously undiscovered bodies. He admitted to taking the lives of 56 victims, although only 53 of them were found. After being declared sane and fit to stand trial, Chikatilo went to court on April 14, 1992. Throughout the trial, he was held in an iron cage designed to keep him away from the relatives of many of his victims. The trial continued until August 1992, and the verdict was announced 2 months later. On October 15th, Chikatilo was convicted of 53 murders and sentenced to death by firing squad. The sentence was carried out on February 14, 1994, with a single gunshot behind his right ear. At the time of his execution, he was 47 years old and had 2 children. Thus, we have reached the end of this terrifying and thrilling journey into the mind of Andrei Chikatilo, the serial killer who left a bloody mark on the hearts of many and the history of the societies he lived in. We have followed his crimes and life events and discovered that the darkness that engulfed him was not only a result of his actions, but also a consequence of his upbringing and the challenges he faced from birth. Remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and activate the notification bell to receive updates on what's new.